Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Mates podcast. It's not a podcast. I'll start that again. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Movie Mates review. You can tell we haven't done this in a while. I don't know why I started off with that. It's going to be a short review. Anyway, bad start. Matthew here. It's going to be a shorter review today. As you've seen by the title, it's the latest Ghostbusters film, Ghostbusters Afterlife. This film was marketed pretty well, I think. There's been a lot of rumblings about it, and it's got a pretty good cast. Paul Rudd, Finn Wolfhard, two sort of fan favorites of cinema and TV in recent years. And of course, we've got McKenna Grace in there too. So yeah, there's loads of big names here. If you're watching this and thinking, is it a connection to the 2016 one, all female cast with Chris Hemsworth too, or what's the crack with it? Don't worry, I was similarly confused. I hadn't watched any of the Ghostbusters films, so I'll pass over to Callum to explain canonically where this film is set and just what the film is about. So yeah, off to you, mate.
Yeah, so this film's set in present day. It's a sequel to Ghostbusters 2, although the connections for the most part are pretty tenuous. I would say that this could exist easily in a continuity of its own. And we'll talk about how we feel about how it connects to the wider universe. But the plot of the film is Carrie Coon is struggling financially until her father dies and she inherits this new property in this sort of ass crack of nowhere kind of place. And it turns out that her father maybe has some connections to the historic Ghostbusters. Don't want to give too much away in case people haven't seen the trailers. But then the kids of Carrie Coon form this team from their newly made friends, and they become a Ghostbusters team in and of themselves. That made
Yeah.
sense, hopefully.
Yeah, despite the obvious Finn Wolfhard comparisons, it is very much Stranger Things meets Ghostbusters. I feel, especially with the younger cast as well. So it definitely freshens the franchise up for sure. I'm not sure how you broke down your notes, mate. I did non-spoiler and spoiler, but I'll be honest, I don't have much to say on either. So if you're good to kick off non-spoiler thoughts, then
Yeah, if we want to go quickly into the cast, you've mentioned McKenna Grace and you've mentioned Finn Wolfhard. McKenna Grace, I think, is great. I think she's great in everything. I know that you're a big fan of Gifted.
yeah,
I do think she's a really talented actress. Finn Wolfhard, I think he maybe gets a bad rap, and I think there's a level of stigma around casting him because of Stranger Things. People think, oh, he's being cast not because he's a good actor, but because he's popular. And I think he really doesn't get a chance to make any kind of impression here, good or bad. Like, I think his screen time is probably half the amount of Kent Grace is. Like, I really don't think he gets to make any kind of impression.
yeah, his screen time is extremely limited, and it's quite bizarre given the fact he's so heavily marketed. And I definitely get that because he's very popular and he's a big name for sure.
And they probably had to pay him a shit ton.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. Like he was the focal point of the trailers, arguably too. But like you said, McKenna Grace, it's arguably her film in my opinion. She gets a lot to do here, which is nice because, as you said, I'm a big fan of her in Gifted, and I think she's briefly in Captain Marvel as well. As a young Carol Danvers. So yeah, I mean,
She
this
plays a
film,
lot of young versions of other blonde characters. Like she was young Sabrina in the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. Like there are two or three examples, but I can't pull them from my brain exactly at the moment.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of films recently. I think she'll be a huge name in the future. And with that too, this film isn't without its big names. Paul Rudd, surprisingly
Charming as
marketed,
ever.
charming as ever, and just coming off his Sexiest Man Alive win, I think. But that being said, he's not in the movie a whole lot either, is he? He doesn't have a great amount to do. He's kind of the he's like the Peter B. Parker character, a bit older than the rest of the cast, and he kind of is the funny, quirky teacher. I thought he was absolutely great. He's probably the best part of the film for me, comedy wise as well. He's great.
Yeah, I think he gets a chance to be fun and nice, but I wouldn't say funny. Like
Okay.
maybe it's that he's not telling jokes exactly. It's more just I think the film has like a fun, funny vibe, but like it's not like there aren't jokes. And I think I imagine if you watched the original Ghostbusters films and this back to back, it may be a little jarring because those films were like uh it was like the SNL stars of the time, who were just, known for doing like sketches and bits. So they were like doing jokes.
Yeah.
Whereas here I think it's something quite different.
One thing really jumped out to me about this film is that there's no real structure to it. I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. It's just I find that like it is quite weirdly paced, and I couldn't really determine where the act division was. Like I couldn't really tell what was supposed to be the second act, the first act, or whatever.
Hmm.
If that makes sense. And certainly, if you try to break it down in that structure, the third act, if you can call it, if you can split it into that, it feels entirely different. Yeah, you know, it feels like a totally different film. It really goes to town in that crazy, you know, Ghostbusters stuff. Whereas the first 2/3 of the film, runtime wise, are certainly more about the characters, and there's not a lot of the ghost stuff. Did you feel similar?
Yeah, and I mean, this is just a comment that, you know, I don't know whether, I don't think you can construe this as spoilers, but it just feels like it just ends, and you're like,
Certainly,
what?
yeah,
Like
certainly. It's
I
very
think, you
abrupt,
know,
isn't
that
it?
that could easily be, uh, you know, the jumping off point for a further part of the film. It feels like there are pieces missing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I feel like it was a really abrupt ending, and certainly there's a scene we'll get into in spoilers where you know it's out of nowhere, really. But for the most part, it's I can't really pinpoint what I didn't really connect with about this film. It's not that I find it's not overly bad. Like there's things I really enjoy about it, but it just it just lacked that real like spark for me where I feel it's got great rewatchability. Like it really does fall in the same category as a lot of these recent remakes and sci-fi films from the 80s where it's nothing special for me
Mhm.
personally. And that being said, I still think there's a lot to enjoy here. And I haven't seen the 2016 Ghostbusters, so I can't compare to that. But from the critical you know
No
reception for
bother.
that, yeah, well, there you go. From the critical reception that, it seems like it wasn't great. So I think this one is getting a good bit of traction in regards to, you know, good reviews. I'm not sure how well it'll do at the box office with the pandemic, but still it seems like the reception's pretty good. I personally didn't have an amazing time with it, but I can say it
Mhm.
was, you know, still pretty decent.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been, you know, 30 years in the making trying to get Ghostbusters 3 to happen. And I mean, even if you quite liked this, I think the best opinion that could be said of this is that it's quite good. I mean, I don't even think that I'm quite there yet, but I think you could go, yeah, it's quite good. But
Yeah,
then at that
certainly.
point, why was this the one that, you know, all the cast said yes to? Because obviously there were some holdouts. You know, they made an original agreement. You know, whenever they made the first one that, you know, to produce sequels, they sort of had to have the agreement of the entire group. You know, the actors and also the director of the first two, Ivan Reitman. So you know they sort of all agreed that if they were to make a second or a third one, they all had to agree that it was worth making.
Mhm.
And I'm just kind of surprised that this is the one that they decided was worth making, because I'm sure they've had better scripts through in 30 years.
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, Ghostbusters is a huge franchise. It's not one that I've actually ever watched or connected with particularly. I don't know why.
Hmm.
You know, it is my kind of genre. I like that stuff, but no, it's not something I've ever really had a spark with. But this film didn't do wonders and wanted me to watch the previous ones either. You know, it's
Hmm.
you know sometimes that would happen where a really good remake would make you want to watch the originals, but this didn't really influence that for me at all.
Yeah, I think it's in the unfortunate position where, and people might disagree with me that with this, I think to enjoy it, you have to have seen the originals. But even if you have seen the originals, it doesn't guarantee you'll enjoy this,
Yeah,
because I
yeah, it's
think
an awkward
there's
position.
like it's in this weird middle ground where I feel like it has too many references to for a new audience to connect with, but not enough like nostalgia to be appreciated by the, you know,
Hmm.
kids of the 80s. So I think it's just in this weird middle ground, and I think it's going to be stuck to find its audience really.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I agree completely with that.
I think maybe kids, you know, like younger kids who are like, you know, going to absorb all the information, and you know this'll in their mind, you know, be the first of a new franchise to them rather than a continuation of the old ones. You know, they obviously have no idea of continuity. You know, they just think that this is new information, new references, new characters. I think, you know, with that complete removal of perception and continuity, maybe you could enjoy it. Like I think maybe younger kids with just complete uh ignorance to the franchise.
One thing that certainly surprises me as well, bro, is that the quick turnaround between, you know, sequels. You know, it's not as if that it was a huge time gap. As in, you know, one thing I'll compare it to with is like take the Star Wars prequels and Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Like I think between the last one there. What was the last prequel? It wasn't Attack of the Clones. It was Revenge of the Sith and Force Awakens. That was still what, like 10 or 12 years? Yeah, right, about 10 years. This is like half the time between the last Ghostbusters film, if even that. So it's not as if the audiences are really begging for a Ghostbusters film or anything like that. We just got one 5 years ago. Now maybe begging for a good Ghostbusters film.
For a good one.
A good one, yeah. That's the question there. But it's not. I just find it bizarre that a studio would do that, such a quick turnaround. I would have thought they would have left it to let that nostalgia for the originals, you boost up again. Like, I don't know.
I feel like maybe with the death of Harold Ramis, they were kind of like, why wait?
Yeah, that's certainly a possibility. I feel, and I'd be interested. I think there is a big discussion to be had one day about how we feel about these remakes of films from the 80s, 90s. Just talk about Star Wars there. Even Jurassic Park. It's the Jurassic World films are huge these days, and Blade Runner, things like that. So it's becoming. It is just the dumb thing these days, and of course that
you get a continuation where you get like an old person who then passes the torch to someone else.
Well, yeah, that's it, man. I think later on this year we've got The Matrix as well. Now that's another franchise I haven't even seen, but it's you can guarantee.
Are you gonna watch? I think if you don't watch those films, the fourth one
I'm gonna have to watch them.
Nonsense to you.
I'm gonna have to watch them. I really wanted to watch the Ghostbusters films before this. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't have the time, but I feel like with those Matrix films, yeah, I've got to watch them because I think I'd be just confused as hell otherwise.
One final point I just wanted to make in non-spoilers is brilliant visual effects. Like I want to give this film its due. It looks fantastic. I think they do their best. Visually in terms of cinematography. I think they do the best that you can in like a small town kind of aesthetic. But when it comes to the ghosts and the technology that was used, the proton packs and the traps and everything.
Yeah, it's really good. Great. Yeah, it's got like an It vibe to it. Another Finn Wolfhard project, but it's certainly got that aspect to it, I feel. And I think visually it is quite unique, and that's one thing I would credit the film for 100%. Like the visual effects on the ghosts and the ghouls and stuff, they're really good. They don't lose their 80s charm, I feel, too, with that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, as you said, the comparisons with other Finn Wolfhard projects are pretty easy, which leads me to think they're probably writing these roles for Finn Wolfhard.
I feel he's been typecast completely, yeah.
I don't know why you would do that and then draw attention to your film, and make those comparisons easy. I don't know why you would do that from a marketing perspective, or like a creative intellectual property perspective, because then people would be like, Finn Wolfhard was in It, and this is another small town bad guy thing where the kids team up against the bad guys. Like, it is an easy comparison.
Finn Wolfhard's career really fascinates me at the minute, because I just worry, I worry that he could fall down the same trap that potentially, Daniel Radcliffe did, where he's been typecast in a certain role that audiences can see him outside of it. If you look around, I think Daniel Radcliffe has some really good films after Harry Potter, but I think everyone on the planet would agree that his acting heyday was those films. You know what I mean? That was his peak. And I feel like with Finn Wolfhard, like he's still really young, but he's been typecast so early on. Like, I'm trying to even think of a project that I've seen where he's not this, in this kind of sci-fi genre with people his own age, this young group of teens. So
he was in a horror movie a few years ago with Mackenzie Davis, I think, and it got absolutely panned. But I think he was like a weird, creepy teen. So I mean, I think that was somewhat of a departure, but it got an absolute kicking critically, I think. But I mean, he's not been lucky with like characters with character development, because in It he's just like the funny one, and then in Stranger Things and here he's kind of just, I'm there and I want to date one of the local girls. Like, that's his character, yeah. And he doesn't really add much. Like, he's quite incompetent in a lot of situations.
And it's a real shame, because I think he's a really good actor as well. Like, it's not as if he's really bad. He's good.
He's not just like a talented child actor. Like, he's a talented actor. Like, I think he deserves better than what he's getting.
Yeah, 100%, mate, 100%. And with that, mate, if you finish your notes, that leads me to ask you the question of massive hit or piece of shit. It's a difficult one this week.
I feel really bad about this because we watch some absolute shit. Like we watch some horrible, horrible stuff. And I'd say most of the horrible stuff I watch, we don't even review. Like I just do that for my own sick, twisted pleasure, I suppose. Like all the like garbage Netflix Christmas films. I mean, I have a real warmth for them. But I think you would absolutely despise them. So I don't even ask you to watch, the Princess Switch 3, Romancing the Star. I'm like he's gonna have to see the first two Princess Switches, and he has a job and he goes to university. Like he doesn't need this in his life. But as I'm saying, we watch some absolute dog shit, and I would say I'm actually normally quite generous. Normally I will give massive hit to even ones that maybe slightly let me down. And I can't, as you said, I can't quite pinpoint what's missing with this, but it just really missed me connection wise. Like I just couldn't get into it. Like we got to the end of it, and I just looked at you both, me and my dad, you and my dad, and you both said you enjoyed it, and I was like, really? Especially like the first. I liked the first third. I thought this has some potential, and then acts 2 and 3, I was really checked out. So I'm unfortunately gonna have to give it a piece of shit, despite it
Oh,
having a lot of great
yeah.
pieces. I think that they didn't come together.
I think I'll reluctantly give it a massive hit, but it's on the low end of the scale. Unfortunately, I think there's no real spark to it. But that being said, I don't think there's anything atrociously bad specifically that I can think. Oh, that was just horrendous.
Mhm.
It's one of those ones where like it's quite forgettable. Like I don't see myself ever rewatching it, but um, it's it's not like it's not like I would say do not watch this. Like it's a waste of money. It's I think people will enjoy it. And there's some funny moments in there too. So I'd say if you're a fan of Ghostbusters or you're a fan of Paul Rudd, Finn Wolfhard, McKenna Grace, Gary Coon, yeah, go see it. Um, yeah, go watch it. But yeah, spoilers then, mate.
I have 2 points.
2 points. Yeah,
That is
I have three. Yeah.
that is the complete
Kick us off, mate.
complete combination. So it is very bizarre when the old Ghostbusters rock up, and they're this Deus ex machina, especially because whenever McKenna Grace makes the call to Dan Aykroyd and he answers the phone in the trailer, I think a lot of people were led to believe that that was Bill Murray,
Bill Murray,
and
yeah.
I think he would have been an easier entry point for maybe newer viewers to be like, oh, that's Bill Murray. I remember that he was in the originals. I think Dan Aykroyd is less of an accessible one of them, for newer or more casual audiences. I mean, obviously, I recognize them and everything, but I mean, did you know who that was?
No, I feel bad because like he's obviously a huge star from that film, but
Mhm.
and
And he
SNL, I
wrote
think.
it as well.
Yeah, I think as for it's interesting. I like that we've got two perspective here. You've had experience of this film before. I haven't. I think for me, Bill Murray would have made more sense in terms of a marketing standpoint. For the for the film, I get they leave it ambiguous in the trailer and stuff, but
And they
I,
definitely only got Bill Murray for one day.
well, I think Bill Murray is like notoriously hard to work with, isn't he? And a lot of his films, it's a shame.
I'm not gonna start with beef with Bill Murray
Bill
today, but
Murray.
from what I've heard,
I do love
yeah,
Groundhog Day and Zombieland,
I mean,
so
he's
I
an incredibly
enjoyed it.
talented actor. One of the greatest comedians of all time. Groundhog Day is one of the best films ever made.
I agree.
But it seems like a lot of that success is due to Harold Ramis, and his management of Bill Murray on set. And obviously they had that huge beef, which you can hear about in our review of Groundhog Day, which we did in our time loops episode.
Yeah,
I think that's
a while ago, 25, I
is
think.
that episode number 25? Yeah, yeah.
25, yeah.
So I think they obviously only rock up for one scene in the third act, and it's absolutely bizarre. I imagine you didn't even know. I imagine you didn't even recognize the third Ghostbuster there.
I saw Bill Murray and thought, yeah, that's the OG Ghostbusters. I mean, the costumes help, but it's out of nowhere, isn't it?
Yeah, like, and they feel so out of place. And then Bill Murray has this kind of interaction with Gozer, because they had an interaction when she, from memory, took over Sigourney Weaver's body in the first film. So like they play this like weird comedic old man music as he's like, bloody hell, we would have I reckon we would have worked out if you just cooled your jets, and maybe we could have had a more serious romance. Gozer, wink, wink. Sorry, it didn't work out, babe. And it's just weird. And McKenna Grace is just there on the grass, like a bit baffled by it, and we're all a bit confused, I think. Like when he talks to her, it just that moment is meant to be the climax of the film, and Gozer and her forces are defeated minutes later, and in that moment it should be like a slow build of serious tense music or something, or maybe underlaid with some of the music from the original, but it's like this oh, like pottering
Out of
old man
place.
music, and I was just like, what is this?
Yeah, I agree. I thought the absence of the traditional Ghostbusters theme was quite bizarre as well. There's no real
Yeah, I think they played
momentous
over the credits.
over the credits, but I think that's the one thing of of this franchise that is the most marketable. I think everyone, it's like Men in Black. If you haven't seen Men in Black, you know Men in Black by Will Smith. If you haven't seen Ghostbusters, you know the Ghostbusters song. Like it's part of pop culture, I think now, and it's crazy that it wasn't even in the film, really.
I think how jarring it feels over the credits is, quite indicative of the fact that these films do not tonally match up. Like if you go from watching Ghostbusters 1, 2, and then this one, you're like, this is a different universe.
Yeah,
Like
as
honestly,
someone,
I watched the 2016 Ghostbusters, and like I think that works enough in, like, it is essentially a complete retread of the original film.
Mhm.
But it's not unwatchable or anything. You're just kind of like, why did they bother to just do the first Ghostbusters but not as good, and with less funny people? Like I don't understand why they did this. Uh,
Yeah,
and like the issues with that film have nothing to do with the fact that it's a female cast. It's that it's a coincidentally female cast that you know made a bad film. Like but I just don't know why. It's like with Home Sweet Home Alone. They make like a joke in that film, like, you know, huh, well, what are they doing? Trying to remake like these original films from the '90s, but they never go quite well, do they? As though they think they're like an exception to the rule, and that their film is somehow better than the
yeah,
original Home
yeah.
Alone.
It's
Like the only
cringe.
reason you would make Ghostbusters 2016 is if you thought that you were making an improvement on the original. And I don't know how anyone could watch or could read that script or watch that film and go, yeah, I reckon this is an improvement on the original. But even past all the issues with that, it still feels like it could take place in the same universe, just 30 years on. This one does not.
One thing it seems like you're saying to me, mate, is, and as someone who hasn't seen the previous ones, is that this 2021 Ghostbusters, it feels like it just feels like a regular sci-fi film, but with like the title Ghostbusters, and then it's feels like they forgot Ghostbusters until the final third when they remembered, oh shit,
Yeah,
this is the film. Do you know what I mean?
it's very earnest, and like it's very like a lot of the cinematography is very like interstellar.
Yeah,
Like
it's very
going through like
grand.
the
It's very,
cornfields, and
yeah,
it's
yeah, for sure.
small town farmhouse, like it's a lot of that kind of stuff. Whereas this the original Ghostbusters was this big sprawling like city epic comedy. Like it's just very, very different, and it's not better.
Hmm. It's a real shame. It's a real shame, mate. Anything else from yourself, bro?
Just one final thing. I would say that it doesn't tonally match up with the film, and I'm glad that in a lot of the case, like I would have liked, if it was a narrative departure but a tonal consistency. Whereas I think they did the opposite. Where they
It's a
have
good
this
point.
completely different tone, but then they commit too much to retreading some of the narrative of the original, because it is very tonally detached from the original, but then it brings back the same threats from the original. It has Gozer and Zool, and her guards, essentially. Her forces. Uh, so it's bringing back the same threat, only to it's like Gozer has been beaten already in the original, and they're bringing her back just to have that narrative tissue, to be sort of a soft lean into this. And it's sort of like what they did with Star Wars, The Force Awakens, when like the one of the things I like least about the sequel trilogy is the fact that they just brought back the Empire under a different name. So you're like, okay, so we just watched you know, 3 films about the rise of the Empire, 3 films about the fall of the Empire, and then it's just risen again, and then the rise of Skywalker is just a massive, yeah, it's the Empire again, but it's also Palpatine, and it's you know, the Final Order and ships and battles and everything, and you're like, what the fuck is this? But you know what really upset me with that is that, you know, we've watched, you know, this epic hero's journey of the Skywalkers, you know, taking down the Empire just for it to have not mattered. And I think a lot of you know, passing of the torch films want to have that like connective narrative tissue of bringing back the threats of the originals to then pass it over to the new ones, have it
90%.
sorted, and then do something else in future films. But I think it's
Like
just
Terminator,
lazy.
I think. I feel like Terminator has that, is struck by that same
Oh,
bug.
I mean, well, yeah, because Terminator, you know, the threat isn't even really the Terminator; it's Judgment Day. So, and that's, you know, the threat in every single Terminator film. And you're kind of like, well, if like they've already said on multiple occasions objectively that the Judgment Day is inevitable, so like just bin it off. Like enjoy what little time you have left. Like if you're just postponing it, like why bother? And also, you know, if you know, if you're like protecting the savior or whatever, you know, like, you know, it was John Connor in the originals, and then in this latest one it was the woman Danny. You know, you're protecting the savior who's gonna like bring up the uprising against the machines. Like why bother? Like it's like in a zombie apocalypse. I'm going on a lot of tangents here, but it's like in a zombie apocalypse, like, you know, what is left of life after you get rid of the zombies? What's left of life after you know, you take away the Terminators? Like you see in Terminator Salvation, the world's absolutely like ravaged. Like I'd rather die than than live in that world.
That's why I quite like Terminator 3, even though it's like the odd one out of the bunch.
Fucking love Terminator
I
3.
quite, right? It's pretty good.
Like if they had been like, you know, boom, objectively terminate Judgment Day is gonna happen, it can't be stopped, and then it ends with Judgment Day, and that's just the end of the franchise, and they're like, couldn't do anything to stop it, you know, great.
Yeah, I agree.
They're like they did everything they could and it still failed. Like absolutely bleak, but you know, poetic.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, mate. Does that wrap up your thoughts on Ghostbusters Afterlife then, Callum?
That would be everything for me, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, viewers, for watching today. We really do appreciate that, and of course, stay tuned later on this week, probably for Hawkeye. We'll be doing that every week, and yeah, by the time it hits December, it'll be Spider-Man season, so that's right around the corner. I can't wait for that. Callum and I are finally getting to see it. Hopefully, like, well, I don't know what it is, 15th, 16th, something like that.
15th, yeah.
15th,
We've
yeah.
also never seen anything in IMAX because we've never had one in Northern Ireland
Yeah,
when
it's
we've been
exciting.
alive. So with the new opening of Cineworld Belfast, we actually are getting an IMAX 3D.
Yeah,
And within, you know, 4 hours of the tickets going on sale,
that's
you know,
mad.
the most of the tickets were gone in almost every cinema in Belfast. So we did manage to snag a couple of tickets to the IMAX 3D. So we're just hoping that it's everything that we hope it to be.
100%. And with that too, plenty of other new releases coming out November, December. House of Gucci, Last Night in Soho. We'll probably get those reviewed in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And obviously the Matrix 2 is coming out soon. So plenty of content in the channel leading up to Christmas. So yeah, hope you guys are all well. Hope your family and friends are all safe and well too. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye bye.